Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. This is our new series, Cymru and Byth podcast, and I am delighted, very excited to introduce this series and my co-host to you. This will be the ultimate Welsh podcast for football fans as we delve into all things Wales in the international breaks and, of course, around the big games. And I'm thrilled and delighted to welcome to the channel and introduce you to my co-host. We'll call him Harry Trades. How are you, mate? That's right.
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thank you for asking me to do this, and I'm excited for what's to come.
Indeed, it's going to be fun, mate. And look, like as soon as we spoke on the phone, I think we spoke for like 45 minutes straight off, and it was we had a good laugh and a good crack. So I think it'll be interesting. But for people who are not familiar with your content, you've got the two channels. You've got Harry on Wales, and then you've also got the Harry Trades YouTube channel. Just briefly tell the people all about those.
Yeah, so the Harry Trades one I've been going at for years now, to be fair, but only recently found my actual niche, which was like a fantasy football game, based on obviously football, called So Rare, and I basically build lineups all week and hopefully win some cards, some cash. It's like a FPL meets. I don't even know what the other side of the comparison would be, but it's like a pay to play sort of fantasy football game where there's strategy involved. And I mean, okay, I got it. FPL meets like FIFA in a way, but there's like a scarcity element. You own your cards, and it's a whole bunch of fun. And that's where I've sort of grown my channel on, mainly on that channel. And I've done a few vlogs. Like when I watch Wales play in Qatar and stuff, so I do the odd sort of in real life thing. But mainly it's all fantasy football based. And and the Harry on Wales is a brand new channel which kind of came through and happened because of our conversation in some ways as well. That was the reason why you probably we had our conversation on the phone and stuff, and it went amazingly well in that sense, and that's why we're kind of here. But that was just off the whim. I didn't see much Welsh content basically, and I don't support a club. I'm a Cardiff boy like yourself, but I wouldn't say I support Cardiff. I follow them, but Wales is obviously our country, and I want to talk about them basically. So that's why that one came about. But that's a really new one. That's what, maybe a month and a half old. It kind of spanned from the Bellamy era, to be honest, mate. That was the inspiration, because it feels like we've been in a bit of a dry patch for a little while, hasn't it, as Welsh fans post World Cup. And I just think it just feels like the right time to sort of not jump back on, but I've never stopped supporting them, I've never stopped watching them, but it just feels like we've got a new lease of life, I think, as a country, when it comes to football. So that's where that came about. And then from that is obviously what we got going on.
And all your stuff's linked below on YouTube in the description and that, and the audio podcast as well. So people, please go check it out, subscribe, all that good stuff, and of course make sure you subscribe to Cardiff City World. It's interesting, mate, because like you say, it feels like we've been in a bit of a dry spell, but also we're coming off the back of qualifying. In the last sort of 15, 20 years or whatever, we've qualified the most we've ever qualified. And certainly for someone my age, I didn't think it was going to happen pre-2016. So it's kind of, but you're right. It's been a bit rough recently before Bellamy came in. But on the Bellamy thing, I want you to cast your mind back a little bit, and kind of twofold. And I want you to tell me how you felt when the Craig Bellamy era began and when he was announced and stuff like that. And then also tell me how you were feeling, going into this qualification, and particularly the opening two games. Were you sort of confident, or was it a bit of hopefully we can kind of squeeze through, stuff like that? Where did you stand with those two sides of it?
Yeah, I think on the Bellamy announcement stuff, I wouldn't say I was shocked that he got the job in a negative way, because it feels like he's been sort of groomed is the only word I'm going to use, but in a good way, for that role for a long time. I don't really foresee there being, or there's not, in my opinion, many other coaches, that really, would have fitted the role. I don't think post, Rob Page or whatever. I don't think there was much of a maybe much competition for him necessarily. It was just more of can he or has he got the experience at this point after being with with company for the last few years, and was obviously started at Cardiff City 18s and has kind of progressed to being obviously assistant manager with company for the last couple. And yeah, once company got announced at Bayern and he didn't go with him, you kind of knew, right? It was like something's brewing here, right? And that was before he was announced, I'm pretty sure, of him becoming Welsh manager. So honestly, I'm absolutely buzzing with it. As an appointment, knowing how companies teams have been playing. Okay, I know they had a tough time last season being Burnley in the Prem, sorry, but like the football they played in the Championship was unbelievable. And I know that's not all Bellamy, but a lot of it would be coming through him and of course company. And if you could just give us an answer that from as a Welsh fan, you bite your hand off, because what we've seen over the last couple of years, mate, has just been it's been really tough to watch. I know, Page was there, in the World Cup or whatever, and let's be honest, that weren't really that good of a display, over 3 games. But post then, it just felt like, honestly, like I couldn't even tell you, what's happened positively. Really, like nothing much has really happened. We haven't broke anyone through, youngster wise. Like it just feels like a really low time. But I think football works in waves, doesn't it? You can't for like a country like we are. Unfortunately, we don't have the pick of the bunch like an England do, and we can't just bring in like 24 world class players or 23 or whatever. So injuries and stuff happen, and you go through dark times, because we've had our light. We had the 2018 Euro qualification and going to the semis. We had the World Cup not too long ago. Like we've been lucky. Like you said, you probably didn't foresee that happening. From your sort of era. Me the same. But like maybe we were due 2 years of just fucking that. Just a bit of doom and gloom, and
Yeah,
then out of that comes, well, like you mentioned, in the intro bit, like, the first 2 games under Bellamy. I mean, mate, it did not feel like a Welsh team, because I'm so used to watching them set up so negatively from kickoff. You watch and you just watch in 90 minutes. It's more like, can we survive for 90 minutes rather than can we thrive for 90 minutes? And Bellamy has somehow turned these players who, a lot of them are Premier League, they're in and around Prem, they're in and around Championship. Like they obviously very good football players. They're not all creme de la creme Premier League players. We know that. But we know they're very good football players. They wouldn't be in a national camp if that weren't the case. But I felt like Page just weren't getting enough out of him for whatever reason, whether that's his tactics or whatever. Players maybe didn't buy into him. It's obviously a combination of everything, I guess. But mate, I just can't believe what he's done in a short space of time, as far as how much information he's managed to get through to the players in 2 games. They had I think I watched the interview earlier. I was telling you, I think he had 9 days exactly with them. 9 days, 2 games, completely unbeaten. We absolutely smashed Turkey. Realistically, I know we didn't end up winning the game, but from like a possessional standpoint, key passes, big chances created. It was like they. To be fair, Bellamy said it in his interview. He said, "I didn't expect Turkey to actually not be able to cope with us in the way they sort of didn't, and they tried to adapt. It didn't work. 0-0 draw. Okay, you could. I mean, for me, that was a success, knowing that was his first game against Turkey. They were just unbelievable in this most recent Euros. Like, into quarterfinals, I think, in the end, and gave a really good account of themselves. Okay, they were missing a few players, from Turkey's side of things, and to go and beat Montenegro away in the fashion we did, in the conditions as well. As much as we didn't get 6 points, we obviously got 4. I literally can't think of many negatives at all from the first 2 games, if I'm being honest, mate.
yeah, and I think one of the things which was really like fascinating was, I think it was after the second game, like Craig Bellamy pointed out that like this is probably going to be the worst it's going to be in terms of he's only had probably realistically. I know you said 9 days, but it was like 3 or 4 days before the first game, and then 3 days or whatever. But like a couple of days before each, and one of those days in between the games would have been like a recovery day. So for him to get that much of an improvement out of the squad was quite impressive. And I, like you say, mate, it's how he set them up to play both in and out of possession was night and day from what we've seen in previous years and previous regimes. And I think what was refreshing as well was the implementation of the young players straight away. He wasn't afraid to put in those young players, because we all know that there's this crop of young Welsh players coming through, but it felt like Robert Page didn't trust them, even like your Rabi Matondos, in that playoff game. And it felt like Poland were on the ropes in extra time, and you felt like just add a bit of pace here and we could go and win this. We don't need to go to penalties. And Rabi Matondo and I think Aaron Ramsey are on the bench, like one very young, quick player, skillful player, one very creative and experienced, and you're just kind of thinking he's happy to go to penalties, and and then it's just a lottery. But in terms of, like, obviously I don't want to spend ages on those two opening games because we've got a lot to talk about, but in terms of those two opening games, what excited you the most about the performances?
I think it was the biggest thing for me, just as a contrast to how we were playing under Page, like you mentioned there, and touched on like how negative we were realistically in most areas and most times in the games where, like you said, we needed to go through in that Poland game. It obviously didn't happen and went to pens. But I think from the Turkey game, like just the fact that we dominated possession, 67% possession against Turkey. I know we're home, but I'm sorry, but that is like outstanding. And I know, possession doesn't necessarily correlate to winning games of football. But ultimately, if you got the ball more than the other team, most of the time, you can have a positive outcome because they can't score if they haven't got the ball most of the time, right? So, there's a reason why Bellamy's trying to implement, especially at home anyway, a very ball dominant side. 4 big chances created. All right, you could argue, well, the negative side of that is we didn't finish any of them, which is fair enough. Some big chances. Ramsey had a couple that I recall, and I think Joe Rhoda missed an absolute sitter, didn't he? Back post where like went over the bar, or whatever. We had chances. Yeah, okay. Negatively, you could say that we didn't finish them. 15 shots for Wales, like 15 shots in most games. If you're creating 4 big chances and getting 15 shots on goal, you're going to score a goal or two. That's just how probability ends up working in your favor. And I was just so shocked. I'm just looking here. We doubled them in passes, 602 to 302. Like that for me, in the first game, is just so encouraging to see. And like a midfield too of Ampadu, Jordan James, Harry Wilson was floating. Like it's not as if any of them are that old. Like Wilson's getting 27 now. It's not as if he's young. In that terms, he feels young because he's been around for fucking donkey's years, hasn't he? But I was just so impressed with how we took the game to them. And I just, were they capable of doing this under Page? Maybe. Did he want them to do that? No. So it's like, that's the issue. We could have probably saw this a couple of years ago, but the manager that we had, at the time just didn't maybe want that. And I do get it. I appreciate all different types of managers' ways of winning games of football. There's more than one way to skin a cat in there. Like, we get it. That's why football is so fun to watch, and there's so many different strategies and ways to win. But with the players we have, quality we have on the ball, we can and we should go into most home games in this. Obviously, we're in Nations League now, but then into qualifying in March. We should be going in looking to dominate possession every game because I think we have the players to do it. Okay, you take out. Right now, we've got a Ramsey injury. Well, we do have a Ramsey injury. We have an Ampadu injury. Like, we do have things that, if 1 or 2 cogs out of the system end up leaving, for injury reasons, it does become, an issue. And we'll touch upon that probably later on in the podcast, who's coming into the squad in that sense. But honestly, man, I'm just so delighted that Bellamy has just been brave and said, you know what, we got players who can play. Let's just go show the world and show our own fans that we can actually remind them that we can do that,
Yeah, definitely, mate. And I think what was very interesting, and I kind of finish on this from those opening couple of games, was that he got that real good tune out of them on the Friday, I think it was, in the first game, and Ramsey played like as a false 9, didn't he? Yeah. And then everyone in the second game was kind of like, oh, he'll go with the same 11 because it makes sense, doesn't it, when you've had a great performance like that. And he didn't. He tweaked it. I think Keeper Ball came in, didn't he? And it was just, I like that because I'm a firm believer that different games require different tools, different opponents, different situations. You need to utilize what you've got because, some games a false 9 will work. Some games you need a bit of a bigger target, or some games you might need a smaller forward up front when you're going to play it on the deck more and kind of try and shift it around a bit quicker. So, like, that was impressive to me. I wasn't surprised though, because I was obviously lucky enough to spend a couple of hours with them with Craig, not like 2 weeks after he had been appointed, and one of my favourite parts of that evening was listening to him talk about the way he wants to play football and the tactical side of it. And unfortunately, because it was like a live event, we had to kind of move on a little bit from the tactics, because I think he was worried about sort of boring people, but for like tactics nerds like myself, I was like, let's talk about this forever, like, you know. You know, he was super impressive, mate, honestly, and both sort of before and after, and just the way he talked about what he wants to do. I think if he's able to implement even, you know, half of it, we'll be in for a very exciting period as well as Welsh fans. So obviously, you mentioned like Ampadu injured, Ramsey injured. The Ampadu one is a blow for me, because I look at Ampadu and Jordan James, and I think they're such a good combination, and particularly if we're going to be quite attacking with the wide players, like when Nico Williams played right wing, didn't he? And like, I just think they're big. There's a big combination, and it's a big area of the pitch for the way we want to play, and they're so young that, you know, they could be there for the next 10 years easily. But
100%.
He caused a bit of a shock to some, and he brought back Joe Allen. Were you surprised to see Joe Allen brought back into the fold? And do you think it's a good decision? Can you see why he did it?
Yeah, am I surprised he brought him in? I am surprised. Does he do this if Ampadu was fit? Bellamy in his interview on the second said that, you know, one of the journalists asked him that question basically, and said, you know, would have you brought in Joe if you hadn't had injuries to Ramsey and Ampadu, because you're losing like 180 caps worth of players there, bringing in Joe, brings in sort of 70 odd himself or whatever. And experience wise, I'd say I am shocked, because he hasn't started a game for Swansea all season, I don't think, which, you know, fitness issues and whatever. And Swansea have been doing pretty well from what I've seen so far in the last couple of games. So I can see why maybe he's not sort of getting a look in that sense, because it's hard to change a winning side most of the time. And, you know, from a Welsh perspective though, like Joe Allen has been through everything with us, hasn't he? Bellamy mentioned he played with him, you know, and he's gone through he did the amazing 2016 campaign and World Cup and whatever. And I think if Ramsey and Ampadu are out of that squad for this next two games, I know they're out until sort of December, Jan time. Yeah, I think it's a very smart move from Bellamy to bring Joe in. He basically said as well in his interview that, like, he wants him to go back to Swansea after the two games in good shape, in that, like, we haven't just like completely just rinsed him of 180 plus minutes and like he's just done again now for another couple of months. It seems like to me, like, I'd be very shocked if Joe Allen starts both games, if I'm being honest, from what Bellamy was saying and how we just mentioned there, that like he hasn't started a game for Swansea. I'd be very shocked if he even starts one, if I'm being honest. I say very shocked. I'd be a little bit shocked. I think if anything, he starts at home, right? There's no way he plays away to Iceland in the first game, in my opinion. I think he might come off the bench, you know, depending on how the game's going, see if he can just keep the ball for us for 30 minutes at the end. Who knows? I'd be very shocked if he comes in to start in that first game against Iceland. Home to Montenegro, you've got to fancy him to probably start there if he's fit. Like Bellamy was kind of, you know, lots of like ifs and buts and whatever. I think combined he might get 90 minutes all in. 60 at home, maybe 30 away max, I would say, if I'm being completely honest. But the Ampadu loss side is the biggest one, as in like what he can do and what he does in that system for us. Because when we were successfully playing that from the back against Turkey, you know, him being that pivot player, being able to bounce things around the corner, even back to centre backs and go out the other way, the way he's so comfortable doing that, not to say Joe Allen isn't, because, you know, he's been doing that for 15 years. Ampadu learned everything he kind of did from that Joe. Like, we kind of know that, but Joe hasn't done it for a few years, and his not his legs are going because he's never really been that quick. But like, he's just a bit older. His body's sort of, you know, not as durable as it would be probably 5-10 years ago, obviously. And you know, but do I think he probably still has enough in the tank to do us, you know, 90 minutes max over two games and be a real asset, not even on the pitch, but just off the pitch? Like, I think he's not that I know Joe Allen, but like, you know, he seems like he's a very quiet guy, keeps himself to himself, but football IQ is unbelievable. I'm sure that will rub off on the on the team, albeit for 10 days or so, even though most of these players have played with him previously. Just to have him round, though, I think would be a big sort of morale boost, I think, knowing that Rambo's out, knowing that Ampadu's out. I think we do have a few other new ones that have come into the side as well. Norrington Davis is back fit. Bellamy spoke quite highly of him, likes his intensity and, what he could maybe bring from the left side because, Nico playing on the left side, being right-footed, there's definitely things that, is good about that, but also sometimes defensively does like to get caught now and again. And, someone like a Norrington Davis might be a better option in some ways defensively anyway. Who knows? Maybe away from home. But then like Brooks, Broadhead and Burns are back in the squad. Brooks can do the Ramsey role for me all day long. Again, hasn't really started many games though in the Prem. I think he's come off the bench a few times for Bournemouth. So he's sort of, in that maybe Joe Allen camp of like not really started too many games, but he's fit on paper, just hasn't really done 90. Again, I'd be surprised if Brooks doesn't feature in both games, but like, do I see him walking in? Probably not. But Broadhead and Burns, like Bellamy spoke highly of both of them as well, knowing he'd worked with Broadhead in like the 17s, I think it was, and the 19s. Look, losing Ramsey and Ampadu, you ain't going to replace that ultimately. But bringing in those 5 players, it kind of lessens the load a little bit. I do worry that like we're not replacing them player for player, obviously. But there's definitely things I think Bellamy can do to work around that with, okay, 2 injuries, but like 2 injuries out of 23 actually isn't that bad. For a month long, games of club football, I think he's done half well. The only issue is for me, I know Ramsey's our captain or whatever. I think we can replicate Ramsey. Ampadu is the biggest one. Let's just hope that Joe Allen can, maybe do that at home for us. I think Jordan James will be able to do that away from home easy. It's just who partners him. Does Ollie Cooper come in? Ollie Cooper's been amazing for Swansea last couple of games. I know that might be tough to say on a Cardiff a Cardiff channel, but like Bellamy spoke about him as well and said like he's very versatile and can play, a magnitude of different midfielder roles. Who knows? I think the away fixture being first is quite telling because knowing how that is and how we set up away, in Montenegro and got the win, I wouldn't be surprised if we do something similar there where like Ben Davis played as a left back. We had 2 centre backs in Mepham and Roden. Nico played as a right winger, like you mentioned earlier, with Connor Roberts behind him. The issue with that is though Connor Roberts has just come back fit as well because he was out with a shoulder injury. So I think injuries are definitely throwing a few spanners in the works for Bellamy, but I think we've got enough to go out and beat an Iceland side because let's be honest, like they're not up to much. Like Gylfi Sigurdsson's playing there. I mean, he's 34, 35 probably at this point. A lot of their sort of younger players that I follow through my Sorare stuff and my fantasy football stuff, quite a few of them are injured as well. And so, like, as far as like threats go, I'm really not worried, mate. I'm really, really not. Turkey beat them 3-1. I know that was at home for Turkey, but I'm just not seeing the quality there. And I think we can go and dominate possession away to Iceland, personally.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing will be if we can keep hold of the ball, I think we've got enough pace that just the pace alone will trouble them. The biggest thing I think is we've got to take our chances this time around. I slightly disagree with you actually. I think Joe Allen will start against Iceland, but I don't think he'll start at home because I think he'll sit in front of the back 4 and he'll just literally just sit there and Jordan James will play a bit more sort of, box to box and go pressing a little bit more. But then you're right, what you said, Jordan James is also perfectly capable of being the 6 and someone else coming in to be a bit more energetic. He might also change the system completely. It's an interesting one because we've got like some real informed players in the forward areas as well. Mark Harris is banging form. He's scoring for fun for Oxford in the Championship. Brennan Johnson, I think, has scored 6 in 6 or 7 in 7. It might even be now. Obviously, Lewis Kumas is an exciting young player. Harry Wilson's been banging form. So you're looking at it and you're thinking, there is goals there and there's certainly creativity there. It's just they're all quite young, aren't they? Apart from Kiefer Moore, the kind of forwards are all pretty young. I know Harry Wilson's like late 20s now, isn't he? But there's not a whole lot of experience in there outside of those 2. Do you think? So do you reckon in for the away game he might go with the kind of false 9 type of deal, or do you think he will go with a more of a target man like Kiefer Moore or whoever? But Like for me, Brennan Johnson absolutely 100% has to start, but
100%.
it's
Where do you fit him in,
stringent,
innit?
isn't it? Yeah.
Hmm. Well, if I'm looking at, I'm on SofaScore here. I'm looking at how, I mean, on paper, it looks like we've set up away to Montenegro as a 4-4-1-1, let's argue, with Kiefer Moore, Harry Wilson
Mm.
in behind, right? Brennan didn't start that game. So, does Brennan come in there for Lewis Kumas on the left side? Probably, if we're being honest. Kumas, as much as he's quite exciting and stuff, didn't really show too much there, albeit horrible conditions. I think he got thrown into the deep end there, personally. I don't think he probably shouldn't have started that one on paper, but Bellamy's trusted him and whatever, and he didn't play bad. I just don't think he impacted the game enough to where, you could argue he's in for another start. But going back to that, let's argue, Brennan takes over that left-sided position then. Let's say they do keep Nico as that sort of, cover for Connor Roberts at right mid. Obviously, Ampadu's out. Ollie Cooper started the other game. Jordan James didn't. So Jordan James definitely comes into that one of those two. You say Joe Allen comes in. So then we got Joe Allen, Jordan James in centre mid, Wilson just in front. And I think he has to go with Kiefer Moore if what happened away to Montenegro, he's got his goal and whatever quite early on. I think the only changes I would make to that team is Brennan comes in for Lewis Kumas, and then it's Ollie Cooper and Ampadu out, Jordan James and Joe Allen in. I think those are the only three that are like glaringly obvious. The only difference might be, if I'm just looking at the squad there, if Josh Sheehan might come in for instead of Joe Allen. That wouldn't surprise me because he's been in the squad, he's fit. All right, he's not Joe Allen, obviously, but very similar profiles. I wouldn't be surprised if he throws in Josh Sheehan there with Jordan James. But like you said, yeah, Joe Allen could definitely come in. Like I could definitely be proven wrong there, 100%. But like I was just looking there, Kiefer Moore hasn't scored a goal since that Montenegro game. Has been playing, like he started 3 out of the 4. I think he won a penalty maybe, but I don't think he took it, or something happened where, for whatever reason, he didn't take a pen. But I'd be very shocked if there was more than like 4 or 5, more than 3 changes in that team from the victory against Montenegro. As long as Connor Roberts is fit, because I know he's in the squad, but I don't know, if he's like raring to go.
Yeah, I think like my thing with Joe Allen is I wonder whether he'll start. He might just play, half an hour just for that bit of experience. But I could see it for the away game, certainly, just because we have got a relatively young squad. I know you've got like Ben Davis and some other experience there. I don't think it'll be a great deal of time before we see Owen Beck coming into the starting lineup. I don't think it'll be the Iceland game. I wouldn't be surprised to see him start the home game and certainly get some game time over the two. Like, it's clear that they like him because otherwise he wouldn't be up from the 21s. The under 21s are on the brink of qualifying, hence why Ruben Colwell's down there. And I know like Cardiff fans particularly are not happy that Ruben's not in the Wales squad, but realistically, like, there's 2 ways to look at it. One is that he's been super consistent since the start of the season. He's been very good for Cardiff, and most games that he started, he's done really well in. But also, when you look at the options in the Welsh squad, Lewis Kumas, Harry Wilson, Kiefer Moore, Mark Harris, Brennan Johnson, realistically, all of them are going to get game time and start before Ruben. I would argue
100%.
that he could be in front of Liam Cullen, but I'm sure other people would argue against from slightly up west from where I am. But that is what it is. Personally, I think Ruben is more than good enough and in good enough form to be in the Welsh squad. But I think also it benefits Wales and probably Ruben more to play for the under 21s and actually play, because, like you say, they're on the brink of, or like I said, they're on the brink of qualification, so they do want to keep it like certainly a bit strong. And I also think if any of the forward players pull out, Ruben will be up there anyway. But John in the comments just said, how did he pick Joe Allen above Ruben? But they play different positions. Like, Ruben's not going to sit in front of the defence and be that sort of pivot. Although I think Ruben, if we did end up having injuries and stuff, if he was going to play that false 9, Ruben's quite a good player to play that sort of role because he gets about and he's quite a big boy for a number 10. But there we go. He's not in the squad. As we stand, he's not in the squad. So we'll kind of move on from that. you mentioned that you weren't too worried about Iceland. I mean, some would say that out of the two games, that's the kind of the harder of the two in terms of opponent. Do you agree with that, or do you think that they're both tough in their own way?
No, I completely agree with that. They're definitely, away from home. It's obviously not an easy game for us. Any away game, I think, in any of these Nations League games are tough games for Wales. Simple as. Okay, Iceland beat Montenegro at home 2-0. Like they're no mugs. Like we played Montenegro, we watched the game, and obviously condition wise, it was probably didn't suit us if we're being honest, and we still managed to grind out a victory and whatever. And yeah, I'm not saying it's a walk in the park, but I really struggle to see how we don't go to Iceland and get a result personally. Whether that is a draw, at worst, I'd probably take it. But I think we've got to go in and think we can win that game. Like I'm not seeing enough threats from their team, in my opinion, to worry us too much. And even their back four, like with the so rare fantasy football stuff I do, like I'm tapped into most football players, and I don't know any of their back four, which is not a good sign, really.
Yeah.
But they're national team footballers. Like they're no mugs. Like they can obviously play football, but I think we got to go there and think we can go and keep a clean sheet and win the game of football. I really, really do. I think in like you said, Brennan Johnson scoring 6 in 6 for Tottenham in the Premier League. And I know we're not a one-man team in any way, but Jesus, man, like we've got so much firepower. It's just getting the best out of them, isn't it? And making it work for us away from home. And I think Bellamy alluded to it again in that interview on the second that I mentioned a week ago, that I think one of the interviewers basically said to him, yeah, we didn't expect you to rotate basically as much as you did in the two games. Whereas obviously we played Turkey at home first game and the second game was away. This time it's flipped, it's away first. So whatever we play, I think, away to Iceland will be a different outfit to what we do at home. And I think one of those changes, which, maybe not that much of a surprise, seeing how well they both played, I think, in different ways last games, was, with Danny Ward and Darlow. Like, I know there's obviously controversy around Darlow himself being in the squad and, saying he didn't want to play for us a few years ago, and I completely get it. Like, I'm actually quite surprised that, I mean, I haven't spoke to a ton of Welsh fans, but like from my perspective, like that rubs me up the wrong way a little bit, as a proud Welshman, and I'm sure, people might agree with that, and if you don't, then that's fine. But, part of me thinks, yeah, that's not okay. But then on the other side of things is, let's be honest, Danny Ward's isn't playing regular football. Neither's Carl Darlow, by the way. So, it's very hard to actually give that as like a reason in that sense to bring him in. But ultimately, I'd rather two goalkeepers that can fight for one place than just one, because it felt like he was just there on default for the last couple of years, Danny Ward. Let's be honest, since Wayne Hennessy's retired, and I know we have Adam Davis as well, who's, to be fair, he actually played a few games for Sheffield a few months ago, like early on in the season, but has since not played. And from what I saw with Carl Darlow away from home, like he's an unbelievable shot stopper. I was very impressed with some of the saves he made, and I would not be surprised if Bellamy goes 1-1 again. Darlow away from home, you could argue it might be a tougher occasion, more shots, sort of taken or whatever. And I think Darlow probably is a bit more equipped with his hands, it seems like, than Danny Ward. I'm no goalkeeper expert, but I know a bit about football, and we've seen Danny Ward make a few howlers in the past. But what I was so impressed with Danny Ward at home was his ability with his feet. Mate, he looked like Edison in the nicest way possible. Like, he looked unbelievable on a carpet. Does he look as good as that away to Iceland? Probably not. So for me, I reckon he goes Darlow first game. I reckon he goes Danny Ward at home. I mean, and he kind of just keeps it that way. I'd be disappointed if I was either player. I'd be very disappointed if I didn't get a game, if that makes sense. Like, if I'm Darlow and Ward plays both, I'd be scratching my head going, what more can I do away to Montenegro? We've got, I'd probably saved us the game in a few ways. And on the flip side, Danny Ward had a stormer against Turkey. Like, he didn't have that many saves to make. I recall one, but like I said, his feet work was immense, because we were trying to play out from the back. Successfully did, probably because of how well he was playing out from the back. Like, he was exceptional. And that actually shocked me in a positive way. So I really hope that we play both of them, basically, because I think we should use their qualities in different areas. And that's the positive of having two half decent keepers now instead of one, is we can pick and choose when to use the saving abilities of a Darlow and maybe the feet work of a Danny Ward. So I'm excited from that perspective, and that's just a guess. He could go with one of them twice, and that's obviously blown out the water in that sense. But I think we've got more than enough, even with the injuries that we've mentioned. I really struggle. I think getting less than 6 points in these two games would be I think Bellamy would be a bit disappointing, genuinely.
Yes. On the keeper thing, I think one thing I've learned over the years is like when a new manager comes in, they quite often like their own keeper, someone they trust. And I just wonder whether Carl Darlow is someone that Craig Bellamy's very familiar with and obviously qualifies for Wales. So he felt like that was a good shout. But also, I feel like Danny Ward is someone who plays better when there's genuine competition. Whereas when it's like just a youngster or someone who's not realistically going to play, maybe he gets a bit lax, and that's when you see those mistakes. But I also, again, I agree with what you said, and it goes back to what I said earlier with the outfield players. Is I'm a big proponent of like tools for certain jobs and utilizing players' skill sets for the occasion. And like you say, if Iceland, Montenegro away was rough, like the weather was bad. So you don't need Danny Ward's silky footwork, but you need a good shot stopper who can be, not lose his concentration throughout the game and stuff like that. Do you know what's happening with Sorba Thomas? Because he was super impressive, mate. Oh, that's right. Don't ignore me. I was just looking at the squad and I was like, Sorba Thomas is not in there. I've just realised he's in the
midfield or what, isn't he?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Because I thought I was super impressed with him. I was really happy for him as well, mate. The way that he performed in those games, and he looked dangerous, mate, as well. He's a magnet for being fouled, and I think those types of players are vital. Love those players,
mate. Like having him one side and Brennan the other is just like imagine being a left back, right back for the opposition side, having to deal with the pace of those two.
Yeah,
they can come inside, they can go on the outside. Like it's just frightening, and being able to pin defenders back that far because they'd be scared of the pace from both of them is unbelievable. And I'm just looking here. He started 4 games since coming back from Welsh camp, and he's got himself a goal for Nantes at home to Saint Etienne. They drew the game, to be fair, but yeah, I think
he's really good in the press as well. Sorba Thomas is. He's like really, really good at pressing. And I think that's good in the wide players. But what's interesting, mate, is like you say he goes with Sorba Thomas and Brennan Johnson in the kind of wide areas, is you play against those two for an hour and you have all the pace and the fullbacks, and then you can bring on like a Lewis Kumas or, an Owen Beck a bit deeper. Like there's a lot of pace all of a sudden in the Wales squad, whereas it feels like for years, all the pace came from Gareth Bale, and that was kind of it. Like, I'm sure that wasn't the case, but it just felt like
that.
He didn't have a lot of pace, which is also the benefit of bringing in younger players as well, I guess.
100%.
So here's a question for you then, mate. Would you be happy with 4 points from these two games, same as the first two?
I'd be happy, but I'd want more. Like I wouldn't bite your hand off for 4 points. But I think I'd be satisfied with it. I don't think I would call it like an overwhelmingly a success. Sorry, but I would take it. Yeah, unbeaten in 4 games. But then you could argue, right? So couldn't you? You could go, well, is that an improvement on the first 2 games? Because it's the same amount of points. Like I know there's only so many combinations of points that can happen. It's either 0, 3, 4, or 6. But like. I think I'd really struggle to see.
They feel winnable, the games.
They do. They feel incredibly winnable. We've already played Montenegro away and beat them. There's no way we lose that game at home. Like if we set up how we did against Turkey. Now you got to take into consideration now though. Like managers will suss us out a little bit. Like don't get it twisted. That 45 minutes against Turkey where we absolutely battered them. Like that was the first 45 minutes of Bellamy. You know what I mean? So like. Managers will suss it out. Did Montenegro have enough time to suss it out away from home? Probably not. They had 3 days. But now, like the Iceland manager, for example, or even the Montenegro manager again, with the return fixture at home for us, they'll definitely be more equipped to it, and they'll definitely be a bit sharper with, the things that we want to do. But I'm sure Bellamy will be smart enough to maybe outsmart that and maybe come up with a new little trick in that sense. Because like we've mentioned, one of our big players, Ampadu, and how we do the play from the back and how we progress the ball is out. So something's going to have to change, whether that's Joe Allen, whether that's Sheehan, whether that's Jordan James, whether that's Ollie Cooper. Something's going to change, and hopefully for the positive. But I'm excited, and I think what you touched upon there, like for a long time, it felt like we had no pace outside of Bale. I mean, I'd put Dan James obviously into that as well. We've know he's probably has been our quickest player and probably still is, but he's been injured and he's kind of out of the picture for now. Again, like, hey, when all of them are fit, like Bellamy's got a serious headache, by the way, like a serious headache. How in the world do you fit in, Reece James, Brooks, Broadhead, Dan James, Ramsey, Harry Wilson, Brennan Johnson, Kumas, Sorba Thomas, like 10 players there that could easily all start. And I think going back to what Bellamy said in his latest press conference was, I wouldn't be calling up players if I didn't think they can impact the squad or impact the 11, or from the bench, whether that's starting or whatever. And it just feels like for the first time in a long time, we've got strength off the bench, which is massive. You mentioned there, Joe Allen might come off the bench after 45 first game, good cameo, but then brings on Josh Sheehan to just replicate what happened in the first 45. And we're off to the races and we get ourselves a nice little 1-0, 2-0 away win and whatever. Everyone's sort of happy. Everyone's still fit. I think we've got a luxury now of where, like, for the, I don't remember, I can't recall back to where we had, 18, 20 players, maybe even 23 these days, where like they're all considered potential starting players, which is massive, especially with the 3-day turnaround. It's huge.
Yeah, massive, mate. And then you've also got like the likes of Rabbi Matondo's not in the squad this year, this time round. Daniel James, like you mentioned. Plus, then you've got the 21s that are pushing and doing exceptionally well. It's not going to be for real long before quite a few of them are going to be knocking on the door for the first team or for the full squad. And we mentioned Ruben Colwell earlier. If Ruben Colwell adds goals to his form already this season, he's going to be very hard to keep out of the squad, because this is my advice to my boys all the time when they kind of feel, or have felt over the years, like if they are not getting the recognition or whatever, is what you do is you make yourself undeniable. You make yourself so like they've got no choice but to pick you or to whatever it may be. And look, it's difficult. Same for Rabbi Matondo. I think when he's fit and firing, he could be a massive asset to this squad, but he's got to be fit and firing and show that he can do it consistently. And there's a few around, and there's some highly rated youngsters who are all going to be knocking on that door. Personally, I think Joe Allen isn't going to be obviously he's not in there for the long term, but I also think that he might almost be in it just for this game, this break, because of if you take Joe Allen out of that midfield, mate, it is very, very young and quite inexperienced. Josh Sheehan, Jordan James, Ollie Cooper, Broadhead, David Brooks, Sorba Thomas, Wes Burns. Like, I know, Brooks has got quite a few caps and he's relatively experienced, but the rest of them are pretty young, or pretty inexperienced in terms of international football. So maybe with Ramsey out, he wanted an older head in the attacking third of the pitch, in the middle of the pitch, because all of our experience is kind of way back in it, apart from Kiefer Moore and obviously Harry Wilson. I'd really like to see Mark Harris get a go as well, because off the bench or whatever it may be, because his form probably deserves a chance. He's scored a lot of goals this season already, and the championship's difficult, man. It's a hard league, and if you're a forward who's scoring,
what more can you do?
Right. Yeah, exactly that way. And he's good on the deck as well. Like, he's
works hard as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something, like I mentioned earlier, that Craig had talked about, like the tactical side. Something he talked about was creating overloads all over the pitch, but he also talked about the need to press teams into mistakes. And I thought what he did is, the way I phrased it actually for a title of a video was, He talked the talk beforehand, but then when the games came along, he walked the walk as well, and he did what he said he was going to do. He didn't kind of say, I want to play like this. But then when you see it on paper, it was kind of like half like that. You know, like you see that so often. Like a manager will come in and he'll say, I'm going to play attacking football. I'm going to press. I'm going to do this. And then actually, when they come in, it's a little bit more attacking, but really it's kind of similar. Like it was a complete step away from what we've seen previously under different regimes. And also, I think what was most pleasing, mate, and you made a great point just now about how, you know, Iceland and Montenegro will be a bit more clued up to it, is that Turkey performance in particular the first half, that would have caught a few eyes because social media was like on fire with that, not just from Welsh fans, but football fans. They were like, wow, can't believe what I'm watching from a Wales team. So it'll be interesting because I also agree with you in the fact that I wouldn't be surprised if Craig Bellamy comes up with a slightly different plan or a way to get around the fact that people will know more what to expect from his teams. So it's going to be interesting, mate, because at the back of my head, I'm looking at the squad and I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised to see like Owen Beck or I know Cabango or, you know, David Brooks come back in or even Mark Harris like start or someone. You know, I just wouldn't be surprised to see those form players start, because one of the mistakes, not to bring England into it, but one of the mistakes that England historically have always made is their managers, they don't pick on form. They pick on name and reputation and who they trust. And of course, as a manager, you want to have a core group who you trust. Of course, any manager of any, not just football, anything, like you always want that. But for football, you've got to pick, especially international football, being in form is massive. And that's why I said earlier, like Brennan Johnson has to start 100%. But then, you know, what do I know? When you watch, he'll be on the bench because Mark Harris is playing or Kumas is playing or whoever. Like, but you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
Feel like you'd be mad to not play him because he is just on fire. And it seems like from the few little interviews I've seen, a lot of his loss of form came from some of the criticism he was getting on social media. And apparently he had a talk with, you know, Craig Bellamy and Ange Postecoglou, and they kind of talked to him about it. And whatever was said within those conversations, it's clearly had a massive impact because he looks happy and on fire. Like, so I'll have a bit of that for Wales, but without a shadow of a doubt.
I know.
Right.
I know. We'll take a fraction of that, won't we?
Oh yeah, 100%, mate. So to finish off, mate, we'll do some predictions and stuff now, and then we're going to do our Catch Me Out quiz. So each episode, at the end of the episode, one of us is going to ask the other 3 questions about Welsh football. You've got 20 seconds to answer each question, and your points carry over to the next episode. So this week, I'm going to ask Harry 3 questions, and then next Wednesday, he will get the opportunity for revenge to get into that. But before we get to that, mate, Wales versus Iceland. Give me a prediction, scorers, if any, and why, like briefly.
So for me, I think I'm going Wales 2-0, which it could be quite bold, saying, you know, clean sheet away from home, scoring goals away from home. You know, I know we did it away to Montenegro, but yeah, I think we can go there and get a clean sheet, and I think we can score 2 goals. I really, really do. You know, my worry is there is always that possibility you can concede. Lots of goals from international football come from set pieces, and you know we will have to be quite adept and able in those scenarios. You know, hence Kiefer Moore's playing and some of the bigger lads that can do the defensive side of things. Never mind, you know, from an attacking perspective, from set pieces. And yeah, I think we dominate. I dominate possession. One thing, just on that, and why, you know, my reasons for it. Iceland at home to Montenegro, right? Guess Iceland's possession in that game at home, and they won 2-0.
You know, 20, 30%, something like that. It was. I know it was relatively
41%, which
low.
is obviously
Yeah.
less than Montenegro. Okay, you could argue, that if I go second half, it was 64-36, but they were 2-0 up at that point. So I guess sitting back when you're 2-0 up, like I do get that. And I'm not saying that, Iceland are incapable of keeping the ball. But ultimately, if I'm looking at that and thinking over the course of the whole game, they didn't dominate possession against Montenegro.
Mhm.
Like, I'd be very shocked if we don't dominate this game personally. And I think I'm going 2-0. If Brennan starts, I'd be very shocked if Brennan doesn't get in on the action. And I'm going to go Sorba as well. I think Sorba deserves a goal after his man of the match performance against Turkey, and he came off the bench against Montenegro away. So, yeah, I'm going Brennan and Sorba, a bit of pace. I just don't think they'll live with us. I really don't. Whether that's from we sit back a little bit and we sort of explode that way and use our pace on the counter in some ways, or we dominate the ball. But I think we've got far too much firepower for them. I'm going 2-0. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think I'm very confident, or I'm pretty confident, should I say, that we'll keep a clean sheet. And then it kind of comes down to whether we can take our chances, because we created quite a few chances against Turkey, who are obviously a superior team to Iceland. Different scenario when you're away from home. I actually think it's really important that we get 6 points from these two games, because realistically, the Turkey away game is going to be a whole different kettle of fish to what it was in Cardiff and stuff. So I think it's important that we get as many points on the board as early as possible. To me, I'm going to go. I'm going to go with a 1-0 to Wales. Even though I do think there's goals in this squad, I think it might take a little bit of time just to find our rhythm from a finishing point of view under Craig Bellamy with some new players in there. But much like you, I think Brennan Johnson's definitely going to score a goal, just because he's the
Hasn't he?
But the home game against Montenegro, I think, will be a whole different kind of kettle of fish. I think, I expect us to be on the front foot and utilising the possession in a much more aggressive way. Whereas against Iceland, I think we will, to some degree, play on the break. Not like what we used to with, what we're so used to with Wales, just kind of sitting back, holding on, and then hoping for a set piece or a free kick. I think we'll try and keep possession of the ball, try and suck them in a little bit, and then hit them on the break with pace, rather than letting them have the ball and then try to win it back and hit them on the transition. I think we'll try and keep it and then do it, try to break them down that way. Whereas at home, against Montenegro, I expect us to be on the front foot. I expect also that we'll see quite an attacking side. So against Montenegro, I think we might see, for instance, Nico Williams go back to right back, and you might see like a Mark Harris or someone come in, a Lewis Kumas come in on the right, just to be more aggressive. But what do you think the Montenegro game? Like, what's your prediction for that, and why?
Yeah, it feels. I feel like a bit of a fraud saying like Wales are going to win 3-0 at home to anyone, because like it just doesn't feel it doesn't feel
No, it doesn't
normal,
feel
does
right.
it, for us? But like with what we've got, with the facts on paper, like what reason do we have to not go and beat them 3 or 4-0? Genuinely, like I don't think there's many reasons anyone can give me that we couldn't go and do that. We're all, like I just mentioned, everyone's
History.
always susceptible. Well, yeah, history, but ultimately we're writing our own history right now, aren't we? And I mean, this is a new era. I know history repeats
100%.
itself and whatever, and it's in a new era. There's a clean slate for us, and I think we've got to take advantage of that and show the footballing world why we're a formidable nation. We 4 million population, but it doesn't matter. I think we can punch with anyone at this point. I know we haven't played anyone unbelievable, but like you can only play what's in front of you. And I genuinely think I'm going to say 3-0. I don't want to be too cocky and say 4, but I think we've got to keep a clean sheet at home. If we don't, I think that's a bit of a disaster. And I think we score a couple of goals, and I'm going to go, I could easily say 2-0 and maybe copy the first one, but I think there's 5 goals in there over the 2 games for us here. There's got to be. And I know, like, it don't matter how many you score as long as you outscore the opposition. I get that, and especially in international football, there's lots at stake. And I would take 2 1-0s. I would. I'd bite your hand off for them. But I do think, like you mentioned, with the firepower we have and some of the form some of our guys are in, like I I honestly can't see past a 3-0. I really don't. I'd be very shocked if we aren't, a -1, -2 type of thing. If we're talking odds and whatever, like I'd be very shocked if we don't score a couple. I'd be very disappointed if we didn't. I really would.
Yeah, and I think also like we can only go on what we've seen in those first two games. You've got a very small sample size, haven't you, for Craig Bellamy's Wales? So
Right.
you can only go on what you've seen, and what we've seen is a team which keeps possession of the ball really well, presses really well, and creates chances. So if we can add finishing to it and defend really well and keep clean sheets, so like if we can add finishing to that and replicate what we did with all those other assets in the first two games under Bellamy's charge, then yeah, I agree with you. It should be 3-0. Football's not played on paper, so and maybe it's the pessimistic, Wales, like the scarred Wales fan in me, but I'm going to go 2-0 against Montenegro. But like same as you, like realistically, I don't see too many reasons why we can't. The atmosphere will be bouncing. Everyone is well on board the Bellamy train in terms of getting behind him. So I wouldn't be surprised as long as we play in a similar vein to the way we did it previously in the first two games. So I'll go 2-0, and I think Brennan Johnson will score again. I got a feeling he's going to bag another couple over the international break, so it should be good.
I didn't tell you my goals, did I? I need to give you
go.
my goal scoring predictions.
I think Mark Harris will score as well, mind.
Do you? I'm going to go Kiefer. I'm going to go Kiefer gets one at home. I'm going to say Wilson gets one. I think Brennan's going to get 2 over the 2 games. I think Brennan's going to go again.
Here's a quick question then for you before we do the quiz. Do you think Kiefer Moore starts both games? Do you think he plays one or the other? What's your sort of prediction in terms of him starting?
Gut feeling says he got to start the Iceland game away from home for his physical presence and how we saw that transpire against Montenegro. Probably does 60-65, and then at home, like let's say Kiefer scores a goal or 2 in that away game, sorry. And I know it doesn't just go off this, but like I'd be disappointed if I weren't getting the start at home as well. If I'm Kiefer Moore, if I've gone and done my job away from home, reward me. Let me go play on the carpet and let me go score a goal or 2 at home to Montenegro because there's goals in that. So
yeah, especially as a striker, if you want to play
as a striker, right? As the vocal point, I think the one big thing that we were missing against Turkey was actually a bit of a target man in the box, because if two of those headers fell to Ramsey, and he ain't a header, like he has scored headers in the past for Arsenal, and I'm not saying he can't head the ball, but he ain't Kiefer Moore, if we're being honest. And I think if some of those would have fallen to Kiefer, we might have been winning that Turkey game. So for me,
maybe
I
in
think
that
I think he
starts
starts the first game at least. Yeah, I was just going to say starts the first game at least. If he does well in the first game, he probably starts the second. If he doesn't do well in the first game, I think, like you said, maybe a Mark Harris comes in. Maybe they go Brennan as the 9, so it allows us to have, Silva from one side, but then another wing on the right side, whatever way you want to do it. But I'd be very shocked if he doesn't start the first game, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I think he definitely starts the away game. I was just looking at the squad. We haven't got the biggest team.
We don't, do we?
And I think Iceland's biggest threat will be from set pieces. So I think so even from a defensive point of view, Kiefer Moore is probably going to start. I think. Just looking at it, we got quite a small team, really.
We do, don't we? It's like Jordan James, Kiefer Moore, Joe Rodon, Mepham, Cabango, Ben Davis. We got like 6 tall players, but Cabango probably doesn't start. So, 5 out of 10 of the starting 11 isn't terrible, but it's not like 7 out of 11. It's not 8 out of 11.
Yeah, it's just not a massive team, is it? Like in terms of size.
Not
right.
at all. Brennan's not short, actually, to be fair. I'll give him that. Brennan's not. Yeah, it's probably 6 in there, isn't it? Really? 6 or 7.
Right then. Let's finish it off with 3 questions to catch out your opponent. It's a running score each week. Today, I am the quizmaster. Next Wednesday will be Harry. You've got 20 seconds to answer each question. And we will start now. First question is, who is the most capped Welsh goalkeeper in history?
That older fella, isn't it? I don't know his name. It can't be Wayne. I'm going to have to say Wayne Hennessy, but I know it's not.
Wayne Hennessy is the correct answer.
Oh, who's
1
second?
point.
Is it? Who's the older fella?
Neville Southall. Neville Southall is
Southall.
number 2.
Got you. Okay. So,
Question number 2. Who is the most capped player as a captain? So who played the most times as a captain?
Great question. Can't be Rambo, can it? Bale?
Is that your answer?
Yeah. It's wrong, isn't it?
It is wrong. The answer is Gary Speed. Played 44 times as captain of Wales.
What a player. Interesting.
What a player indeed. And then finally, who is the youngest player to make their debut for the Wales national team?
I know this one. I remember the game. It's got to be Harry Wilson away to Belgium. 15 years old and maybe something days, or was he 16 at the time? 16
years,
something.
207 days, Harry Wilson. So 2 out of 3 for you. We'll make a little note of that.
Take that.
2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Not bad at all. And then you'll come up with 3 questions next week. Next Wednesday, same time. The Cymru and Byth podcast, where we'll have 2 games of football to discuss, and we'll break it all down. I know a lot of people are going to watch this a bit later on because it's some of them are traveling home from work and all the rest of it. But for those who don't know, Harry does not live in the UK, so time differences mean 6 o'clock start, and my wife is thrilled because I've got the rest of my evening free for a change. So there we go.
Love it.
Popular in my house. Thank you very much to everyone who's tuned in live. Thank you very much to everyone who's downloaded it and watched afterwards. We'll be back next Wednesday, same time, Cardiff City World. Also available on the Sports Social Podcast Network, on the Cardiff City World feed, on audio platforms everywhere, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. Please check out Harry's YouTube stuff, which is linked in the description below. Please make sure you subscribe to Cardiff City World. Check out ACEpodcastnation as well. Got a massive 2-part interview with Craig Bellamy on there from our live event, which totals about 3 hours altogether. And there's some really interesting stuff in there about his plans for the Welsh team and stuff like that. Get you in the mood for Friday night. I'll be back tomorrow night on the Cardiff City World channel for the preview of the Wales-Iceland game. And I'll also be on Ace Podcast Nation with Rhodri Gigs on football, where I'm sure we'll talk about it as well. So plenty of Welsh football content coming your way. And I've sent a few people to Iceland, hopefully, who are going to come back with some content as well. But we'll see how they go because it's their first time doing it. So they might get carried away with the beers and forget about the thing. But this is what happens, I suppose. Harry, thank you very much, mate. Hope you enjoyed your first episode with us. And we'll be back on Wednesday, mate.
I loved it, mate. Yeah, appreciate it. And let's hopefully we get a win on Friday.
3 points indeed. See you in a bit.
See you in a bit.